Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear listener, dear viewer, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. As always, I'm bringing you exciting, wonderful and impactful content through the medium of this show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. And this time around, we're going to talk about the safari business. And I have an exciting guest for you. My guest for you is Kachelhoffer. And he'll forgive me if I'm mispronouncing the name. And I'll give him every opportunity to get it right. Can you introduce yourself to the viewer in terms of telling us who you are and what your background is?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mogobe, for having me on the show. This is my first stint on media, so I'll apologize going forward. But yeah, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. My name is Kachelhoffer. I'm in Botswana. I've been in the safari industry my whole adult life. Since I left school, I went an apprenticeship and qualified as a professional hunter, etc., etc. And I've been heavily involved in not just the hunting, but the conservation aspect, because they go hand in hand.
Yeah, but I suppose for Botswana, we know that the tourism is the main driver of the economy.
Absolutely.
And this is an area that maybe the indigenous Botswana may not be familiar with. So for the benefit of our community out there, or entrepreneurial community, can you just explain the industry, the part of the tourism industry you are involved in,
okay,
and the safari business you are involved in, so that we can have an understanding
of how it works,
what the business is like in general, and talk a little bit also about the dynamic, because there's been certain changes under the new regime. When Ramasisi took the place of Rakhama, there have been certain changes. So feel free to just to set it all out as a background for our discussion.
All right, so I'll just paint a broad picture, and then you can zero in, where you feel you need more understanding. So basically, I'm here to talk about tourism in general, but more specifically hunting or consumptive tourism. Our tourism in Botswana is nature based, and that's divided into two: non-consumptive and consumptive. And non-consumptive is like you're traveling and going to lodges and things like that, and then consumptive is your controlled hunting component. And that's broken down into state land, hunting on state land, and hunting on private land, game ranches, etc. So those are the two. Controlled hunting is the major component I'm going to talk to you about, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the activities, just to put the viewership into perspective. So, when people book a hunt, it's not just about going out and just killing something. It's about the whole experience. It's about a challenge. It's about traveling to a new country, experiencing new culture, and the benefits of hunting. It's not just somebody shooting an animal and you get a bit of meat and stuff like that. This is a very high income. It can be potentially a very high income component to the tourism industry. I don't know if you're aware, last year they had the auction that they did in the past, before there was a suspension on hunting.
I don't understand really what was the thinking behind the hunting ban and what was the reason for it being lifted. I don't think the average viewer really understands.
Okay, I'll go into more detail on that. So I think it was 2012 or so, but they started talking about it. The government they started talking about it, and 2014 they effected a suspension on hunting, and the reason being. The reason it was cited is the decrease in animals, but they never really looked at why the decrease, and they never said it was hunting specific. Anyway, so that was done, and there were severe consequences to that for the industry, the hunting industry, and the people that worked in the industry. So
because everything had to be shut down.
Yeah, everything had to be shut down, and you had people that had been working for 20 years, and they'd been working in the hunting industry. You've got people that are in their 50s and their 60s. You've got people that come from a village that don't have a school education, but in the bush they're the best. That's where they grew up. So, all these people have suffered greatly through this. Anyway, fast forward to I think it was beginning of last year, 2019, where the government, under President Masisi, have lifted the suspension on hunting. And, that has been very welcome, not just the community, but not just the industry, but the rural communities, because a lot of these communities went from earning maybe 1 million, 2 million, 3 million pula a year to absolutely zero, because in a lot of those areas are marginal areas which are not conducive to photo tourism, but they're very conducive to hunting, and there was no alternative put in place. When the suspension was enacted. Okay. So a lot of those communities are happy. The international community also, big segment, applauded it, because what hunting does is, you have the Okavango Delta, which is
I think let's have a little bit of a deep dive into that.
Okay.
I want you to define controlled hunting, what it is, as an activity, and then explain the environmental benefits of controlled hunting.
Okay.
Because the talk you get on the newspapers is that, look, we're wiping away our elephants.
Yeah, we're just going to shoot everything that moves. Yeah.
So really, I want you to just help the viewer understand, because a lot of people just know it superficially.
Okay. Yeah. So I think one of the better ways to explain it is we can draw a parallel with farming. Okay. So you have a farm, you've got 80 head of cattle, 100 head of cattle, and controlled hunting is like this. What we're looking for, we are not looking to decrease the population. We are looking to actually optimize, whether increase or optimize the population. We don't want to affect the growth of the population. And what I mean by this is, when we do hunting, controlled hunting, is that we're targeting old male animals that are past their breeding. So if you go back to the farming aspect,
the form of culling.
Yeah, exactly. So your bull has worked. He's worked his 12 years or his 15 years. He's past his prime. Younger bulls are coming in. You want to introduce new bloodline into your herd. So that bull gets sold off. And that's exactly the same if you're doing buffalo hunting, for instance. You're looking for the old Kwatali. The old bulls that have been pushed out by the young bulls. The young bulls are breeding, but these old bulls are just going to be eaten by hyenas or lions.
When you say bulls, are you referring to elephants? Or
elephant, everything in general. We're looking for male animals. We're not looking at females, because they breed. And you don't want to shoot a pregnant female. The whole idea is to bolster the population. This is what people don't understand when they say, hunting, you guys are going to finish the stuff. So what happens when we finish the stuff? Then what do we do? It's in our best interest.
What about females? Are there some such things as menopausal animals that are sort of near the end also, if they are female?
Yeah. I mean, we would like to introduce that, and I think on private land it's very important when you have a closed system, a closed environment, where you can only, your property can only carry X amount of animals. Then you've got to look at not only your old males, but all your old females, because they are not reproducing, and make space for the next generation, and not to overburden your property, because if you damage the habitat, your carrying capacity goes down, so you have fewer animals. So you've got to optimize it. So you've got to manage it. So that's the same thing in an open area, in a concession area. Yeah. So coming back to the hunting. So we're looking at harvesting old male animals. For instance, when you say controlled, and I'm going to talk about lion hunting, which hasn't been opened in Botswana, but it was there in the past. The last 10, 15 years, the protocol we've been using in places like Zambia and Tanzania is, you want to hunt a lion that is over 7 years old, which means that lion has an opportunity to breed, you know, and it's an older lion, you know, in the wild.
What's the lifespan of lions?
Exactly. It depends on the area, the density of other lion, because the males kill each other, you know, and whether there's
20
space.
years, 10 years or what?
10, I would guess, you know, sometimes this will get up in arm, but, you know, anywhere from 10 to 14 years. You know, so you're looking for a lion that you can hunt, and a hunting area will be, you know, maybe 50 by 50 kilometers, and you're allowed to hunt one lion. So
let's talk the business side of all this, because we're talking about the safari business. So for that, we really want to know how the lifting of the suspension of the ban or the cessation of the ban has helped the business. I want you just to explain it like you explain it to a child, so that we can understand how this is impacting the business. How does the business work? And how did the ban?
I'll start with the ban.
Yes, the ban affect the business, and the lifting. How did it affect the business? Just take me through those stages.
So I'll start with the ban. So I think tourism currently, you know, is one of the highest earners, the GDP earner. I think it's 15% at the moment. Now that's one component. Now the other component is the hunting industry that hasn't been there. So we're looking to bolster the whole tourism industry, and this is a big boost, because, like I said earlier, you know, we've got key non-consumptive areas like the Okavango Delta, like the Chobe, you know. But what about all
Why do you call them non-consumptive?
Because currently the land use is for photographic tourism, for travel, lodges, and etc. etc. And they're conducive to it because there's a lot of water, there's a high density of animals. So tourists come in for 2 or 3 nights, and then they move to another camp, you know, so they can see animals. Now you've got this vast country outside of this, that the land use is not conducive to photo tourism. I mean, I can take you to an area in Nata, just north of Nata. The lion are there, but you're not going to see them because the bush is like this, you know, and they're more sparsely populated. The same thing.
There are no lodges there.
And there are no lodges there currently, but, you know, for photographic tourism, you need to see lion, maybe a lion, elephant, and all these things in a short space of time. It's super luxury. You know, hunting is a different thing. So let's take this computer, for instance. This is your prime area, okay? Then hunting is the buffer zone. And what happens here is you can't do photographic tourism here. It's not viable. But hunting is a very
it's
viable.
Not viable, or it's too dangerous because of the thicket and the presence of many animals.
And you know,
I want to understand the viability. What controls the viability?
So I'll give you an example. So let's say this laptop here, I don't know if you can see it, this laptop here, then you have buffer zones. And these buffer zones, animals migrate with the rains and the drought. So in the wet season, they'll come into these buffer zones and they'll move, you know, back and forth, okay? So this is where they come into contact with people too. So the whole idea of the buffer zone is a conservation aspect, you know, so that you don't have people living right on the boundaries of national parks where the conflict is high. And also the land use, you get a far bigger return or greater return from hunting than you do from subsistence farming. Okay, so, and this is where the rural communities come in. So what has happened in the past, you have your national parks and your key photographic areas, then you've got what they call concessions. And you get 2 types of concessions. You get a government concession, and then you get a community concession, which is run and owned by a specific community.
Community means the whole village, right?
Yeah, the whole village, or the villages, you know, that are affected by this. So the way it works with the government concession is straightforward. You know, they put them out to tender, whether it's a 5-year or a 10-year, or whatever the case may be. You put in a bid and a proposal, you win or lose, you continue. But again, coming back to the controlled hunting aspect so that you understand it, both in community and government concessions, the government comes up with, the wildlife department, in consultation with scientists, the community and the industry, come up with a quota every year to say, listen, this area,
for instance, how many so many lions, so many elephants.
Exactly. They'll say, listen, you guys can harvest 10 elephant here, 1 lion, 2 leopards, 5 buffalo, and kudu.
Based on some kind of scientific analysis.
Exactly.
How do they do it?
Aerial surveys, extrapolation. That's a very scientific and technical way. But I think you can agree, and an audience can agree. I don't think we have got a problem with elephant. You know. So anyway, long story short,
we have the largest herd in the world.
Exactly.
350,000 or something like that.
No, I think again the scientists argue, but it's anywhere from 150,000. North up to 200 and up
Nobody
to 200,000.
knows for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and what we allow to hunt every year is only 400 elephants.
Now let me take you back. The lifting of the suspension.
Okay.
How did just touch on the business side? How the lifting affected?
Okay. Well, I mean the suspension on hunting absolutely floored the industry, absolutely killed the industry.
Yeah.
I don't have the figures on me now, but it was a sizable chunk.
It means that there was out there in Europe or in America, there was a sizable percentage of the tourism market, which was specifically for that. So it stopped for the last, how many years?
Yeah, I think it's 5 years now. I think the last bit of hunting that took place, it started in 2012. They started to phase it out, but the last hunting year was 2014. And let's get back to this whole concept here. So you've got a tourism area or a photographic, a non-consumptive area, and you have these hunting areas.
Yes.
That buffer these. So getting back to the land use, hunting supported this tourism, or the industry and the earnings. When the ban was enacted or the suspension was enacted, it went from these concessions were bringing in maybe 5 million pula, maybe 10 million pula, to zero.
Overnight,
just like that. There's one community way in the northwest, I think it's Kai. The community, before jobs or anything like that, they were earning over 1 million pula a year, just in cash, not jobs, not meat, not any other benefit. And that went to absolutely zero. They don't have an alternative.
They were using for development,
exactly,
for building,
for helping people in the community, transport, all those kind of things. That was community money, and it went to zero because there is no other activity. You cannot generate that through any other land use.
Since the ban was lifted, is it 2 years now, a year and a half?
Yeah, it's about a year.
What
are
the differences? What is the impact?
So thank you to COVID, we haven't been able to take off because of the ban on travel. So it's had COVID has had an impact, but it's also had an impact on the hunting. So I think everything will kickstart. Everybody's hoping next year, and there's been a lot of support. Government is still working on some of the modalities. The concessions haven't all been tendered out, etc., etc. I'm going to now even dig deeper in terms of the business controlling hunting. But before I do, give the viewer an idea of your background. How do you get so steeped in hunting and in safari business? Give us a little bit of your background in that regard. Okay, so I grew up on a farm outside Francistown. Since I was a toddler. I was always on the farm, looking after sheep and goats and branding cattle and that. And part of your activity as a Mushimanyana, a small boy on the farm, is hunting. And you start with a Saragan with a catapult. And then later on, I graduated to an air rifle. And my father was.
Which part of the country?
Francistown, near on the Tati River. My late grandfather had a farm there. So every weekend, straight after school, up until Sunday evening. So my parents didn't see my brother and I over the weekends.
Okay.
And any long weekend, we grew up on quite a plot outside Francistown, and it was wild then. There was no development, no house. Where today is Molopo Estate, there was absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So. That's where I was introduced to it. My father is a hunter, but not a professional hunter. Just what they call a amateur hunter, or not an amateur hunter, but a biltong hunter.
Do you have any kind of formal training on the hunting side?
So we were having this discussion earlier, and it's gonna come in later, but. I did an apprenticeship to become a qualified professional hunter. It's a trade, It's like any other trade, whether you're a fitter and turner, whether you're a plumber, or it's a hands-on thing. It's not something you learn out of a book. There is laws and regulations and all that kind of stuff, but it's something you do on the job. So I did a 3-year apprenticeship in Tanzania, and as a Botswana, I couldn't get a job in my own country, but I was fortunate enough to have family friends, and they offered me a job in Tanzania as an apprentice. So I qualified in 2000. I wrote my full professional hunter's license, because you have different levels of professional hunter. You have a professional hunter that can guide clients to take out foreign hunters on non-dangerous.
You mean poachers?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Foreign hunters, as in people who are interested
as in clients, as in tourists.
Yeah.
So, but you take them out after non-dangerous game. So those are all it's from eland, gemsbok, everything down. And dangerous game is termed crocodile, hippo, buffalo, elephant, lion, leopard, and in South Africa, rhino.
Because they've been known to kill.
So you've got to have sufficient experience, to be able to guide clients on a dangerous game hunt.
Wow.
It's not a. It's not. It's not herding cattle.
That's very interesting background. But let's unpack it a little bit. Categories of control hunting. There's commercial, CHA, WMA.
Yeah.
Explain that, communal lands, private property.
Okay.
I want you to just break down the various categories and help the viewer understand them.
Okay, so I'll start right at the top. The top is state concessions. These are vast areas, marginal areas, and they put out on tender, and the bidders, interested parties are invited to tender for those areas, and you have a management plan. I think it's normally about a 10-year period or maybe a 15-year period, because it's like farming. It's a long-term investment. It's not a short-term flash in the pan.
Yes.
So you submit a tender document,
yes,
which is both a technical proposal and a financial proposal. The return will be to government, and that's how those concessions are awarded. And then you have community concessions, which are similar in size, and they are run by the rural community, which is headed up by a community trust. Okay, and that trust is also advised by government, the technical advisory committee called the TAC. And they do the same thing.
So CHA, WMA, what are the?
Okay, so WMA stands for Wildlife Management Area, and CHA stands for a controlled hunting area. Now, as I understand it, the Wildlife Management Area is like a concession in the Okavango, and the designation of that concession is primarily non-consumptive. In the past, there used to be consumptive and non-consumptive. They lived harmoniously side by side.
Vast areas.
Exactly.
How many hectares are we talking?
No, we are talking hundreds of thousands of hectares. And in the past, the concessions were all split between non-consumptive and consumptive, and they worked harmoniously until the suspension came in.
Yeah.
And then the WMAs or the wildlife management areas became solely single purpose. Before they used to be dual purpose, now they're single purpose. And then controlled hunting areas are your government concessions and your community concessions. So same thing with the community. You're invited.
Communal lands.
Community land, and these are bordering these national parks and other concessions. And you're invited to put in a tender, and then if you're shortlisted, then you go and engage the community, and they choose out of a short listing.
Is it a complicated process?
It is. It involves a lot of money. It's a highly technical. It's a highly technical proposal, and it requires a lot of money, to invest. And this is the thing that people don't quite understand.
When you say a lot, you mean hundreds of millions, or you just
no, hundreds of thousands, into the millions.
Yes.
I mean, a Land Cruiser today, just a Land Cruiser pickup, which is essential, is 400,000-500,000 pula. And you can't do it with one. So
you need about 7 or 8. To be successful.
Exactly. At least 4, depending on the size of the concession. So you're already a few bar in it before you've even built a camp. And there's a lot that goes into the management. And this is what I want to put into people's minds also. Just because they've lifted the suspension, where the suspension was enacted, Botswana was at its peak.
Yes.
You know, it'd been managing the hunting since, forever, but the elephant hunting was opened in 1996.
Yeah.
And it was right at its peak. So it's dropped right down. And we, as an industry and the community and government, have got to get it back up to that because it's gone down.
And in your estimation, it will take how long?
Yeah, it's not going to take it's not a light switch. Botswana's got an excellent reputation. The resource is there. But it'll take a few years to get it back on its feet, and probably 5, 6, up to 10 years to get it back to where it was, because these concessions have been left dormant. There's been absolutely no activity in the hunting concessions in the east and the north. I think we were pumping 86 boreholes. So that supported a lot of elephant and a lot of other wildlife. So this is where a lot of the conflict has come from, because the operators,
all of that has stopped.
They had to stop. You know, so we lost a lot of wildlife, and those elephants now moved back to the Boteti and the Chobe and places like this, and that's where the conflict comes in.
Let's talk about private property. I don't know whether you are involved in that form of game ranching as well.
Yes.
Are you involved in that? How does that one work? How is it different from the other two that you explained?
Okay, so game ranching is on private property, whether it's freehold land or leasehold land, and the main purpose we have it for here in Botswana is to offer a hunting safari, and also, you know, coming back to the management of it, you've got to manage the herd, and you know, the excess is marketed as venison. It's sold in the country as venison, goes to lodges, hotels, into supermarkets and things like that. You can either buy a registered game farm, or you can have a cattle farm, and you can register it as a game farm. And this is quite an expensive and a lengthy process. And we've been asked as the industry, you know, to engage government on how we can stimulate the game ranching industry. I think in South Africa it's worth over 12 billion rand, you know, and we're sitting at about 400 million pula. So we've got a lot of space to grow, and you know,
we have more wildlife.
Yeah, exactly, and we've got more open spaces. So this is a very exciting opportunity for Botswana, and one of the ways that we proposed, you know, to government is existing cattle farm. The law is already there, but it hasn't been used. But in existing cattle farms, you're allowed to hunt animals for self-use.
Yes.
But in the law, it says that you can also do it for profit. So what's happening currently, if you've got a cattle farm, you may shoot a kudu or something and make sehwapa, biltong, you know, make a biltong, or as they call it in Europe, jerky. In America, they call it jerky. Or you sell it to you take it to a butchery, or as a ration. So you may get a few thousand pula out of it. But then a professional hunter comes along. What we propose now is that we start using that and giving those landowners access, you know, to the international market or the outside market. All of a sudden, for a kudu, instead of getting 2,000 pula or 1,500 pula or 2,500 pula, he'll get 5,000 and 6,000 pula. You know, and automatically there's value in that thing. And what happens with value? You look after it.
Because the hunter who then shoots it is allowed to take the carcass, or he leaves it for you?
Well, it depends on if it's a local hunter. And when I say local, within Botswana and even in South Africa and stuff, permits can be arranged, you know, for the meat.
But some of these are foreign hunters.
Exactly. So what they do is I don't like to use the term trophy. They will take the head. They will, of course, indulge in I wouldn't say mohodu. But you know, they will indulge in eating it, but obviously they can't take it back. So then that can be sold commercially, or it can be distributed. Nothing goes to waste. Distributed, you know, amongst the community. And while we're talking about utilization,
because I was going to ask you to talk about the human-wildlife conflict.
Okay, I'll get to that. But while we're talking about the meat aspect, so on this topic is, immediately now that farmer is thinking, yes, I can't just shoot those things for free now. All of a sudden they're worth 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 pula. You know, now I'll start looking after them, because if I can shoot 5 a year and I get 5,000 pula, it's 25,000 pula. It's like, hey, that's money, man. That's money, I can pay for diesel, fixed
dollars sometimes.
Exactly. Well,
you're talking US dollars.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
So what we actually,
we're talking pula. For me, that's important.
No, we're talking pula for now.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so it's at least double of what he would be getting otherwise.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, and a kudu is a common animal. You can hunt it in any country. But what's exciting now is we put forward to government the issue of elephant. You know, there's elephant, and this is the human-wildlife conflict. But before I get there, let me just talk about the meat quickly. So, in a concession, when an elephant is shot, nothing goes to waste. That whole carcass, it's taken to the community and they process the whole thing. You know, there might be a bit of hide and stuff that goes to waste. The client keeps the ivory, maybe some of the hide, but that whole elephant carcass is consumed. Bones, everything like that. So nothing goes to waste.
Some of it is used for chairs and these
stools.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
You know, they boil the bones and get the moka, the marrow out of the bones and the fat out of the bones. You know, everything is utilized on an elephant. It's not just shot, a photo taken, and people walk off, because you know protein is a scarce necessity.
Yes.
So let's talk about the human wildlife.
Yeah, I'm worried about that, because that has been where the focus of the media has been, and the media tends to focus on something that is sensational.
Yeah.
You're shown a picture of a farmer who was trampled upon by an elephant, and that seems to be the whole story.
Yeah.
And how dangerous elephants are, and then you don't get to understand how that can be managed.
Yeah. I mean, the human wildlife conflict, and this is one of the reasons that the president, you know, lifted the suspension on the hunting, is because, you know, if you go to the villages, the people will tell you that a lot of the elephant have lost fear for people. You know, I was sitting with an old man from
Kasani, because you see it walking through the street.
I mean, those are a little bit habituated. I'm talking about now on the cattle posts, and even walking through the villages, like places like Sipupa, Namaseri, even Shikawi. You know, they come into conflict with people because they come down to water, but they've also lost their fear for people to a certain extent, because, you know, there's no repercussion. I mean, what are you and I going to do without a gun? Clap our hands like this, and then once an elephant has figured out that you're actually useless, you're going to spend a lot of time running.
Yeah, you know, and you won't get very far.
But you know, on the serious note, we don't understand it. The other day I was conducting a citizen hunt, and you know, I was asking the villagers, you know, where the elephant are.
What is a citizen hunt?
A citizen hunt is a quota that the government allocates to Botswana citizens. And, you know, this is to preserve the cultural and traditional rights of Botswana to hunt. So, like with the elephant, it goes into...
So your role there is to lead them?
Yes, on a dangerous game hunt, on an elephant hunt. It's a recommendation, it's not the law. But, you know, it would be foolish for someone, no offense, like yourself, to go and buy a rifle.
No offense taken.
Yeah, exactly. And now start, you know, you don't know what a bull is, and of course the danger aspect.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, I'd seen some tracks go right past a homestead, you know, and I knocked. I greeted the old lady there, and she was having an argument with her daughter. I said, "Why are you guys fighting like this?" And they said, "No, my mother wants to kill my child." And I said, "But why?" He said, "She's had her hand on the child's mouth the whole night, so that the baby doesn't cry, because the elephants here, that she believes the elephants will come into the hut. So they don't sleep. This is the reality."
But is that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
If the baby cries, the elephant comes?
With female, I don't think it happens all the time, but it can, definitely. You know, and why take the risk? And this is your belief. These are people, and you know, this is where the human-wildlife conflict comes in. We need to capacitate communities and help them with mitigation methods and stuff. It's a big...
So how do you handle that situation instead of keeping your hand over a child's mouth? What do you do?
That's all. This is the reality that people in cities do not understand. You know, foreigners that put a lot of pressure on places like Botswana. Why are you hunting the animals and stuff like that? And, you know, hunting is cruel and hunting is bad. And I say, right, listen, why don't you drop everything you've got in New York or London, and we swap places. I will take a family out of the village, Sipupa, and we swap. And then we'll see how you view wildlife. Give it 3 months, or maybe 6 months if you can push it.
And nobody has taken the challenge
So the
yet.
perspective is different.
I'm sure none of them has taken on that challenge.
Yeah, they don't understand the full picture. You know, and this is propagated by the media that are anti-hunting. You know, it's a liberal movement. It's a big thing. So one of our biggest challenges actually in Botswana and in conservation is people that are anti because they don't understand. So they put pressure on their governments.
Sometimes they have political power, they have financial power,
they've got
but they
all
don't
of
have
that.
understanding.
Yeah, exactly. And they've got all of that. And what it does is jeopardize conservation in the range states. And what I mean by that is what they do is they lobby their own governments. For instance, America is a good example. There's a lobby that says that, okay, as an American, we can't stop you to go and shoot an elephant in Botswana, but we're going to stop you from bringing the ivory back. So what happens is the value of that elephant goes down. So now, and that's what hunting does. It places a high value on wildlife. And that's why I said, outside of these areas, in community areas, if you go to a villager and you tell him that an elephant is worth 100,000 pula or 200,000 pula, they'll say, listen, which planet do you come from? What have you been smoking?
Let's talk about conservation sustainability. I happen to think that our president did a very good job when he went to, I think he went to Nevada, and I think he changed to some degree the outlook and the thinking on elephants. I think he did a brilliant job. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, he did an excellent job. And to take it even further than that, he did one of the regional firsts, I think it was last year in May. He hosted, or Botswana hosted, a summit on elephant and elephant conservation. It was held in Kasane. It was attended by the Kasa states. I think it's called the Kavango. It's a conservation area, a massive conservation area that spans
Southern Africa.
Yeah, that spans Botswana, Namibia, Angola,
Zambia,
and Botswana and Zimbabwe. So we had all 5 presidents there, all of their technical teams. We had outside experts. We were all discussing, the management of elephant, across the range, because it belongs to all the countries, and the challenges and stuff. So that was a major.
The media focused on people sitting on elephant stools. Remember?
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on what was being done.
on the actual issues.
Yeah.
And that is sad.
And what came out of that conference?
A lot has come out of that conference, but I think it just created awareness, for the broader public and the international public, about elephants and elephant management. It's not a cow that you can put in a kraal or in a camp. They roam for hundreds of kilometers, and they have high needs, to survive.
Do you think an understanding, a shift in thinking, that to respect how we're handling it and to recognize that this is the only way for sustainability going forward?
I think a lot of people, I don't say a lot of people that, that don't understand, it's going to create it's going to need a lot more lobbying, a lot more media attention, so that people are put into perspective of, management of wildlife, and coexistence with rural communities. Like I said earlier, it's easy for me and you to say to that guy, don't kill the lion, but he's lost 5 cows, and 5 cows at 5,000 pula a head is 25 grand. I go to a guy in the city and say, give me 25,000 pula. He's not going to do it. But now you want to stop a villager from killing a lion. It's cost him 25,000, and that's his bank. He doesn't have an alternative. And this is why I'm saying the conflict and the killing of wildlife. And again, another important aspect is poaching. A lot of people in rural Africa, they know that poaching is wrong, but they don't have a livelihood alternative. They don't do it to break the law. They do it to feed their families. And this is why I also say, to people that don't understand, why don't you swap places? If you've got a hectare of maize, for instance, and the elephants come through in 2 nights and they wipe it out, you've got a family to feed and to clothe and medicine and school. You've got to find another income. And if you don't, you live way out in the bush. You've got to feed your family.
Let's talk about another subject which is very topical now. The government is talking about it, broad-based citizen economic empowerment. You hear people saying, let's empower Botswana Basike, let's empower actual indigenous Botswana.
Yes.
How does your business, the safari business, attempt to do that?
Okay, so I think that the 2 levels of empowerment, and again, it comes back to the rural communities. Early on, we were discussing this, and I was explaining to you, that the safari industry in Botswana and a lot of Southern Africa is nature-based, it's wildlife-based, you know, and the rural communities, that wildlife occurs on community land. However, in the past, they have not benefited sufficiently, you know, whether it's money or etc.
So we want to see a millionaire from this industry, an indigenous millionaire. Is that even possible?
Yeah, well, I'm getting to that. So, you know, the thing is, if we want the tourism industry, okay, to flourish, we need more wildlife. And the people that look after the wildlife are the rural communities. But so how do you do that? You have to place a value on that wildlife, greater than they have on cattle or whatever they have now. They've got to see a real value. They've got to appreciate that, because it's human nature. If something has a value, you look after it. So that's what we are trying to promote, and what the president wants, that empowerment at that level. You know, communities are capable of earning. You know, it depends on their quota and how rich their area is, etc., etc. But just the cash, not corporate social responsibility or the jobs or anything like that. Just the cash can be in excess of 2 million pula a year without doing anything, you know, and getting that. And that goes also, you know, into their basket with their livestock and all that. And then,
but our safari company is not going a little bit further in terms of offering shares and trying to promote ownership for
well,
citizens.
this is what I'm talking about now. I think government is working on the modalities of that. There aren't many government concessions. We don't have many hunting concessions in Botswana. When I say many hunting concessions, I don't want to forget the Kalahari, but say there are 20. You know, and what we've lobbied the government is, you know, keep those for Botswana citizens. You know, let it be restricted to Botswana citizens. You know, and there's a lot of controversy around it, etc., and investment. I said there's enough money in Botswana with Botswana, you know, to develop it, and you've got a lot of interested parties that are keen to do it. So give them the leg up, and then and that's what we've been working on. And I think that's one of the president's big drives is to do that.
Yes, then of course talk about job creation. That's another thing that comes to mind. Are we getting good quality, high-paying jobs in the industry? Are we able to show Botswana, who've been in the industry 10, 20 years, who we say, look at this guy, he's built himself a house, look at this guy, he's got a couple of cars. Is it really happening?
Well, it's going to happen, but as I say, the industry hasn't kicked off yet because of COVID. We haven't had one foreign client in a concession. It was supposed to be this year, but
in other words, shortly after the ban was lifted, COVID came. Is that what you're saying?
So I'm a professional hunter, and as a Botswana, this is something that's near and dear to me. As a Botswana, I couldn't get a job in my own country. I had to go to Tanzania to be trained. You know, there were opportunities, but as a Botswana, I couldn't get. I wrote to all the companies. I went for interviews. My parents knew some of the people.
What was the reason for that?
They were employing foreigners. So, you know, this is where
they were employing foreigners.
Foreigners,
because
I don't know. Because I mean, you know, hunting is a very specialized thing. I think you have got to have a, you know, not everybody wants to go out. I think you have a certain background, you know, and be exposed to it from an early age to actually want to do it. I think I was 14 when I discovered that you can actually become a professional hunter. You won't become very rich, but, you know, you will enjoy what you're doing. You know, so my parents said from that day on, my head has changed. So, you know, that is not something that is out there, you know, and that's what we want to try and encourage. And like I said, it's like any trade, and you start at a certain level and you build your way up. So the idea is to identify Botswana that want to, you know, and then give them the opportunity to do the training, because you've got to do the training. So by attaching them to a fully licensed professional hunter, so they go along on the hunt and they conduct the hunt with a professional hunter, and they learn all the aspects. You see, the thing, you've got to be a jack of all trades. If your car breaks down, it's no, hey, Muna, Avis or whoever, I need a backup car.
In the middle of the bush.
Exactly. So you've got to do extensive first aid for injuries, for mild infections, cuts, anything like that. So you've got to do that. You've got to do vehicles. You've got to know a vehicle inside out, because out there's nobody. You are it. Okay, as a professional hunter. So some of you haven't even gone into the aspect of shooting and handling a dangerous situation yet. You've got to be proficient in all these other things, because otherwise you're stuck out there.
Yeah.
You know, now with the advent of satellite phones, it's easier.
Yeah.
There's some radio comms in the old days. But coming back to it, so what we want to do is, in these villages where we conduct hunts, is identify guys. And they will start maybe they've grown up in the bush, they've been hunting all their lives. You start them off as a tracker. Then
start as a tracker, and
then the idea is to get them an assistant license. You have 3 types of license. You have a full professional hunter's license, then you have an assistant professional hunter's license, and you have a trainee or an apprentice license. So you start there, and it's a 3-year thing. So you start with an apprentice license, then you go to an assistant hunter, which you can hunt now non-dangerous game, and then you go for a full license. And these require writing exams and going for an interview with the DWNP and members of the industry. You know, I may be an interviewer, and you need to assess someone's capability, because number one, it's a dangerous thing, you know, hunting lions, etc. And number 2 is the reputation of the country.
Yeah.
You know, if people have bad experiences, they look at the country, they paint the country.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's very important to have a high level of professionalism, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a mechanic, whether you're a professional hunter, you know, or a professional guide. So that's one of the things. Now, on game ranches, it's going to be easier. You've got guys that have been working on those farms for 10 years and stuff. Get them a trainee license, get them an assistant license, and that is the springboard to becoming full professional hunters.
Yeah. Now, as we come to the close of our conversation together, I'd really like for you to sort of wrap it all up. And you know, we talk to entrepreneurs a lot. Just you know, something motivational, something that you want to share. I'd like you to look at the camera and talk to the entrepreneurs out there. Tell them how they can be part of the safari business, and what advantages there are there, and then you know, anything else you want to add as we wrap up our conversation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mogobe. I've been put on the spot by a professional interviewer. But I think number one, I think it's like anything in life, you've got to have an absolute passion. You've got to have an absolute passion about conservation and the bigger aspect of tourism. You know, it's like anything, you've got to be good at it. And what gives you the edge in situations like this is having the passion to do it. I think that's number one. You know, if you want a 9-to-5 job, you want an air-conditioned office, a fancy car and things like that, this may not be the industry for you. And it's a long-term investment. It's a way of life. It's a vocation. So those of you that are passionate, I encourage you. This is a very good opportunity for Botswana. It's opening of a new chapter, a new era. We've got the full support of the government and the president to get involved. The government is working on modalities to give Botswana an advantage getting involved in the industry. I don't know anything else, Mr. Mogobe.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, there's been talk over the years that a lot of money in the industry is paid in foreign bank accounts, and there's very little circulation of money here. How is that being addressed? Okay,
so that terminology is called leakage, and that is something that the president is dead against, and the government, and us as Botswana also. So I'm trying to define the term for you. So as a Botswana, if you book a safari, you know, especially a hunting safari, photographic is a little bit more complex. There's a lot of agents involved, and in the hunting industry too. I don't want to target a certain group, but if you are a foreign national operating in Botswana, you don't have to bring in the money to Botswana. As a Botswana, you have to bring in all the money. And then foreigners don't have to bring in all the money. They can bring in enough to keep things running, but it doesn't show on their profits. But as Botswana, you know,
we've also... That change, is that really right?
Pardon?
Shouldn't the money come to Botswana?
Well, this is exactly what the president's fight is about, and us, because it's a disadvantage to us.
What's so difficult to change that?
You know, because, as Botswana, we have bank accounts here, so the money has to come back here. Whereas as for
because you find people coming here for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and not a single tebe is spent locally.
And I'll tell you, if we at a convention, a hunting convention, where you're selling your safaris and stuff, when a client comes to book, we're actually at a disadvantage because we've got to inform the bank. Remember, there's a time difference, 8-hour time difference and banking hours and stuff. And the client wants to come and book. We can't just take a check. That can go into a foreign account. We've got to get banking details, and it's a process, and fill out a whole form.
No, the technology is advanced. You do it online.
Yeah, but still, you've got to get that approval. You've got to tell the bank, listen, you must expect $20,000. If you haven't informed the bank, then they send it back. And then the clients, because the Western world, it's all this and it's all like this. And people get frustrated and say, geez, it's admission. But if I go to this guy here, it's a piece of cake. Your thing is bounced twice. And it happens over a weekend.
So the entire industry needs to change. You can't be one, two. The entire industry needs to change and systematize it.
Yeah. Well, I think the big drive is this issue of citizen empowerment.
Yeah.
That it comes to citizen, because that will greatly reduce the leakages, because I think that's the question that you asked earlier.
Concerned about. Yeah.
So that's why there's a big drive from government to make these things citizen, because, like a friend of mine's a wealthy businessman, he's a Motswana, and he says, I live here. Where am I going to invest? I'm going to invest in my country.
Yeah.
So that is the spin-off of that.
Yeah, Mr. Kachelhoffer, I really appreciate what you've shared with us. But the viewer there might be interested in engaging your company. They might be interested in carrying this conversation further. So what are your contact details? How do they get in touch with you and your company?
Mr. Mogobe, I thank you again for the opportunity. I will give them to you. You can put them on online or whatever. And I'm really happy to help anybody that's keen on getting into the industry.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, but I'm a bush person. This technology and social media, I'm a bit foreign to it.
Okay.
But they can get hold of me with that. I can give you an email address, and people are
what's your email address?
It's my surname at iCloud.com.
Kachelhoffer at iCloud.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for taking the time out. I'm sure you could be in the bush enjoying yourself. You took time out. You came
busy with lobby work at the moment.
Yeah, you took all the time to be with us. And I really appreciate your depth of knowledge, your dedication to your craft, and your preparedness to share all this with Botswana.
Thank you very much. So much, and I really appreciate it. And anytime you want to talk, just give me a shout.
I'll invite you again.
Thank you very much.
Indeed.